The very last sermon Dr. King preached, as you may remember, was on this text. He preached it on a Wednesday night. He'd flown into Memphis, Tennessee to support the 1,300 sanitation workers who were on strike in Memphis. They were on strike because in February 1st, there were two men who were trash collectors. The rain was just, torrential downpour. The two guys in the front of the truck were the ones who ran the truck and operated it. And then these two guys, oftentimes, in fact, the guys who were, picking up the trash and tossing it in the truck, they rode in the back of the dumpster. Right, so they rode back there, and these guys were sitting down there, sitting in the back. They were trying to get out of the rain that was just a torrential downpour, and suddenly this defective truck began to operate. The hydraulics began to operate on their own without anybody touching the buttons, and swept these two men into the trash truck and crushed them. And when it killed them, the trash collectors went to the city and said, you've got to give us better equipment, and you've got to take care of these guys. They offered them 1 month's pay for their spouses, for being crushed by this defective equipment. And so they said, you've got to take better care of people when they're injured, and you got to pay us a living wage, and you're not paying us overtime. And many times we're working overtime, and you don't pay us for that. Things have got to change. And Mayor Henry Loeb, a good Christian man, said, no, we're not going to negotiate with you about these things. And so they went on strike. Dr. King came once during the strike, and then he came back on April 3rd to stand with the striking sanitation workers. And that night in the Mason Temple, he is preaching about this parable and why he's there. And I want you to hear what he says about the priest and the Levite and the questions they've asked. I've shared this with you before, but I want you to hear it in his words. And then I want you to remember that the next day after he preached the sermon, he'd be shot to death on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel. Take a listen.
And so the first question that the priest asked, the first question that the Levite asked was, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? But then the Good Samaritan came by, and he reversed the question. If I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him? That's the question before you tonight. Not if I stop to help the sanitation workers, what will happen to my job? Not if I stop to help the sanitation workers, what will happen to all of the hours that I usually spend in my office every day and every week as a pastor? The question is not if I stop to help this man in need, what will happen to me? The question is, if I do not stop to help the sanitation workers, what will happen to them? That's the question.